An American president infected with a pandemic-level virus during the final days of a re-election year. Double-digit polling deficits for the incumbent, even according to the most conservative polling from sources such as Fox News. An election going on right now, but already being challenged. A Supreme Court justice being added during the final days of a campaign year. And doubt being cast on every branch of government. Fiction writers would have had a hard time creatively coming up with the chaos we're seeing in real life today. As preppers, we have to prepare for any possible outcome so we're not caught off guard. I'm currently trying to prepare myself and my family for multiple potential outcomes, one of those possibilities being a coup d'etat. In this video, we'll look at how possible a coup may actually be in our own country and how it could arise out of a Trump win, loss, or a contested election. What would that look like in America, and what should you watch for and prepare for? Please consider subscribing to our newsletter to give you updates and membership-specific content. Visit www.cityprepping.com/newsletter or click on the link in the description and comment section below to subscribe today. Enjoy the video. So, what is a coup? There are many different types of coups, and full-blown military coups against democratically elected leaders rarely end well for democracies or constitutional republics. Typically, when we hear the term coup, it is applied to third world countries. There are many types of coups. Regime change coups or coups de regime alter the rules of the game and identity of the entire ruling group. Leader reshuffling coups or coup de chef only alter the identity of the top leader without making fundamental changes to political institutions. According to the Corpus dataset, which seeks to track all coup attempts since 1946, a coup d'etat occurs whenever the incumbent ruling regime or regime leader is ousted from power, or a presumptive regime leader is prevented from taking power as a result of concrete, observable, and unconstitutional actions by one or more civilian members of the incumbent ruling regime and/or one or more members of the military or security apparatus. In other words, a military coup may target leader entry, not just a leader exit. For example, even if a leader does not exit due to a military coup, a new leader may still enter due to one if the military preempts the constitutional or quote-unquote regular succession procedures. That means that coups by invitation, in which the incumbent regime leader is complicit in their own removal by the military to prevent the presumptive regime leader from taking office, qualifies as a coup event. As I have outlined in other videos on this channel, there's a finite range of possibilities from this election, ranging from a Trump or Biden landslide, to a close call, to a fully contested constitutional crisis. Any constitutional crisis could end up with various branches arguing over who has the ultimate voice and determination of the leader of the United States. In this case, the military, guard, or other federal or state protective forces may feel compelled to or be directed to maintain the peace. Any martial law is not without also serving some political agenda. And when the military is politicized, the populace can become even further agitated. The type of coup you have really is determined by the historians many years after it has occurred. The fact is that even the most seemingly stable of governments is susceptible to military forces being used to maintain or to change regime leadership, and that fact requires us to look to preparing ourselves. The first scenario is a coup if the current president wins a second term. If Trump wins in a landslide but the populace revolts, what is called a non-military coup attempt occurs. In this scenario, the president and the military would be pressed into fighting against civilians to maintain established leadership and order. How that is implemented could lead to an increase in violent altercations, and it is here where you could be the most affected as violence spills over into your city, community, or neighborhood. Places like Portland have often been seen as hotspots where this nearly has happened. If the win isn't a landslide but has some doubts cast upon its legitimacy, states could seek to distance themselves from federal authority under a clearer confirmation and endorsement of election results and the office of a president occurs. That could result in the current president viewing this as an act of succession and could bring military forces in direct conflict with the populace or state guard units. That, too, could bring armed conflict to your city, community, or neighborhood. The president has an obligation to keep the states united and uphold the Constitution. He would be compelled to utilize all forces at his disposal, including the military, to suppress insurrection. The continued fragmentation and division of the United States could exponentially increase after November 3rd. Let's look at a different scenario, a coup in which the current president loses a second term. If this year has taught us anything, it is that anything is possible, and we have to consider all possibilities. If Donald Trump were to lose or to be perceived to have lost in this election by a majority, and if he chooses to contest the election results and not leave office at the expiration of his constitutional term, the United States military would be compelled to remove him by force. In our country, though, the military shouldn't save us, and it creates an organizational nightmare that completely breaks down the chain of command. The military as a primary tool of politics undermines the American trust in the military. Activating the military on the nation's borders or deploying them to solve domestic political disputes like crowd control already undermines the character of our military and the pride we have in it as a force that sacrifices themselves for the country. That is a dangerous precipice to cross. However, and the more we turn to the military to solve these disputes, the less will really be America. An overt coup requires the buy-in of at least a few of the general military leadership. Anyone familiar with the oath of enlistment knows that those in the military pledge to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The enlisted pledge to obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over them. These are also in accordance with the regulations in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Failure to obey a military order has grave consequences. However, the Uniform Code of Military Justice is determined by the Commander-in-Chief and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. With the Commander-in-Chief in question, some responsibility falls on the soldier, in the heat of a brewing conflict, to determine whether his order is lawful. And that's not a situation you or that soldier wants. So, would the Joint Chiefs sit on the sideline and choose to belay a contested president's orders until another branch of government, Congress, or the Supreme Court definitively ruled on who the president is and whose orders they should be following? Would any commanding general have the support of those under his command to implement any extreme order against a populist, incumbent president, or a presidential candidate's supporting base? It's murky at best. So, what happens even if the military stands down? Should the two events of a Trump loss and a Trump choosing not to leave the office occur, what would be the Secret Service's reaction to it? Now, the Secret Service has been structured under the Department of Homeland Security since March 1st of 2003. Under H.R. 5938, former vice presidents are afforded protection by the Secret Service, and candidates for the highest office in the land are provided the agency's protection. So, both Trump and Biden have Secret Service protection, which is generally directed by the Department of Homeland Security, a department currently headed by a Trump-appointed and acting United States Secretary of Homeland Security. It's important to note that the Government Accountability Office has said that both DHS Secretary Wolf and his acting deputy, Cuccinelli, were ineligible to run the agency under the Vacancy Reform Act. It's also important to note that according to reports, now this is again according to reports, there appears to be some increasingly disgruntled current and former agents under the president's car ride while a patient at Walter Reed, calling the president's actions quote-unquote callous and reprehensible. So, how will Trump loyalists and leadership react with their force who are reported to be increasingly unhappy in the event that the military were to show up at the White House with the intent of removing the president from the offices? Could an armed conflict ensue? If the Secret Service is split and unclear as to who the active president could be, and America is engaged in a constitutional crisis in Congress and the Supreme Court to make that decision, could the Joint Chiefs of Staff be forced into the position of making a determination in the interest of keeping the peace? Were they to do so, some would see that as a clear provocation and a coup d'etat. There are a number of scenarios that open the possibility of some form of coup d'etat. So what should you be looking for, and what should you be preparing for? What to watch for, and what to do. We become closer to a coup when certain things occur. First, watch for any absolute declarations of power, regardless of what the prevailing opinions or vote counts are. This may indicate a leader attempting to retain power or fighting against an usurpation of his power. This could lead to a military being utilized. So second, watch for military buildups in your country's cities, states, or along the commonly traveled highways and byways. This could be a preemptive deployment. Third, remain vigilantly aware of the barometer in your community. Are tensions running extremely high? Are you seeing stressed out people? Are you stressed out yourself? Are you witnessing shouting matches, altercations, skirmishes with the police, or among citizens? All these things to watch for can be early indicators of approaching civil disturbances, martial law, or an early warning sign of a coup d'etat. While any American coup d'etat isn't likely to be driven by ethnic cleansing, as has been seen in other countries, It isn't going to occur without bloodshed or the threat of bloodshed. You need to, first, be aware of this, and second, prepare for it. Your home, barring immediate and overwhelming external threats, is the safest place you can be. Your safest first choice is to always hunker down and seek to wait it out. To do that, you need to have your own food and water stores topped off to survive a prolonged period in your shelter. Second, even if you are in what you feel is the safest location, you have to have an escape route. Walls fail, security can be compromised, and sometimes your final stand doesn't have to be your home. It can be from your bug out location. Bugging out to a safer location isn't always an option for some. If you are part of that category of preppers, you need to go back to plan A and triple check your home is secured and supplied. Third, watch for the breakdown of established structures in little ways. Even a slight power outage or a blocked freeway can result in supply lines being cut, panic among the people, runs on stores and banks, and more. The tiniest additional spark or event can trigger exponentially larger breakdowns in the established systems. Watch for these breakdowns and make decisive decisions about what you need and when it is best to lock down at home. Finally, make friends with your neighbors and expand your network. Regardless of political views, in a coup d'etat, it is really the innocent citizens who are the victims of the leader's power struggles. You will share a mutual contempt for the current state of affairs and a mutual desire to return to whatever normalcy there is to return to. When you commiserate about these things in casual conversation, get to know your neighbors a little. How can they benefit you and how can you benefit them? What are they going to need and what do they seem to have that you might trade for if the situation continues to deteriorate? I'll post links in the description section below about securing your home, items you will need in a true crisis or disaster, and what you should have in your food and water supplies. Nobody really knows with certainty how calm or violent this election cycle will be. It behooves us to not dismiss it as every day. We are beginning to see signs that it will be anything but smooth. We are seeing things we haven't really seen to this degree in previous election cycles. Regardless of who wins the election and who is inaugurated as President of the United States, know that a coup d'etat of some form is possible. Preparing for one isn't entirely different from preparing for civil unrest, martial law, or even a natural disaster. Watch for the warning signs and move decisively as a possible coup approaches. Prepare your home and your family for the possibility of unrest showing up at your door. As always, stay safe out there.